Titas T. A Golden Evening in Ancient Athens Sleep Story. There is a city where your century went to school, and it did not know, while it was busy inventing the school, that this was what it was doing. In the space of 2 or 3 generations, in a town of perhaps 40,000 citizens on a dry Greek plain, human beings invented or perfected the theater, the jury, the citizen assembly, written history, political comedy, portrait sculpture, and the habit, previously unfashionable everywhere on earth, of questioning absolutely everything in public, and your century's vocabulary still cannot discuss politics, economics, music, mathematics, athletics, or education without speaking this town's Greek, because the words themselves were coined here, in its markets and wine parties and exercise grounds, many of them in the exact generation you are about to visit. It is the young evening of a golden day, late in the great age of Athens. The marble on the hill is new. The city is at peace for a rare sweet interval, and you have been asleep through the heat of the afternoon, which is the only intelligent place to have been. So settle into your bed. Let your shoulders sink. Let your hands rest wherever they are comfortable. There is nothing to remember tonight, and nothing to solve. If you drift off before the evening is done, that is exactly what this story is for. You wake up on a couch in the shaded colonnade of an Athenian courtyard in the first cool breath of evening, with the smell of crushed thyme and olive wood smoke in the air, and a city full of conversation warming up beyond the wall. The couch under you is a Klein, the all-purpose furniture of this whole civilization, wooden-framed, corded, laid with a wool-stuffed mattress and a striped cover. The piece this culture eats on, talks on, thinks on, and sleeps on, drawn into the courtyard's colonnade for the siesta hours, and around you, the house is waking from its own afternoon stillness in the usual order, the well pulley creaking first, then the small slap of dough on a board somewhere, then the voices of the household resuming their interrupted negotiations, and above the courtyard's open square, the sky has begun the long Athenian evening performance, the famous light of this country, dry, golden, and precise, turning the plastered walls the color of honey and cutting the colonnade's shadows sharp as the sundials. Your host is a maker of painted pottery with a workshop near the city gate, prosperous, curious, and delighted to have a foreign guest to show his city to, and his standing offer, renewed as he crosses the courtyard now with his hymation over his arm, is the standing offer of every proud Athenian to every visitor in this proud generation. Come up and see it, he says, nodding west toward where, above the jumbled rooftops, catching the first gold of the evening angle, stands the reason travelers cross seas to this town, the hill, the new temples. Come and see what we built. But notice first, as you gather yourself and follow him into the lane, the thing every traveler notices about this famous city, and puzzle at it the way they all puzzle, because it is the key to the whole place. Athens, the marvel of the age, is, at street level, plain. The lanes are narrow, crooked, and dusty. The houses along them, including the houses of the genuinely rich, present nothing to the street but blank mud brick walls, a stout door, a small high window or two, and the general architectural statement of a well-kept storeroom. And inside, they are comfortable but modest. Courtyard, colonnade, plain plastered rooms, a far cry from the painted palaces of the Eastern kings, or even the gilded riverboats of a much later republic. And travelers from the grand cities of the East walk these unimpressive lanes and ask politely where the actual Athens is kept. And the answer, which your host gives by simply pointing upward at the marble catching fire on the hill, is the founding bargain of this whole civilization. The Athenians keep their wealth in public. The private house is humble on purpose, by taste, by custom, and a little by law of reputation. Because spending lavishly on yourself is thought Eastern and vain, and the money, the pride, and the marble go instead into what is shared. The temples, the porticos, the fountain houses, the theater, the gymnasia, the warships, so that the individual Athenian lives simply in a city that lives magnificently. Poor men strolling colonnades kings would envy, and the whole town, arranged like an inside-out palace, its treasure rooms turned public, and its private quarters plain. And whether or not your century would sign the full bargain, it should drowse tonight on the beauty of the idea itself. A people who decided that the splendid thing, whatever it was going to be, would belong to everyone, and built accordingly, uphill, in marble, where the evening is touching it now. The climb winds up through the lanes to the saddle below the great gateway, and then the steps, and then the marble, and you come out on top of the Acropolis into the full golden evening with the whole shining reason for the journey standing in front of you. Brand new. Understand what brand new means tonight. The Parthenon above you was finished within living memory. Its marble still white gold and crisp-edged, unweathered. The great temple standing at this hour of history exactly as its builders released it. Every line of it still bearing their intentions like wet ink. And the lines are the famous secret, for there is scarcely a straight line in the whole building. The temple platform swells gently upward toward its center. The columns lean fractionally inward and bulge subtly at their middles, every supposedly straight element curved by careful inches. Because the architects understood that a truly straight line, at this scale, in this light, looks bowed and dead to the human eye. And so they curved everything slightly to look perfectly straight, building not the geometry itself, but the experience of the geometry, an entire temple adjusted to the optics of the human observer, which your century's architects still study on their knees with measuring tapes, and which means the building you are looking at is, in the most literal sense, looking back, designed around your eye. Inside stands the colossal Athena of gold and ivory, glimpsed through the great doors glowing in the interior dusk like a lit lamp in a marble lantern. And outside on the terrace stands her other self, the bronze Athena of the champion, spear upright, so tall that the sailors say, and it was said in this very generation, that the evening sun on her spear tip and helmet crest is the first of Athens a homecoming ship sees from far out past the cape, the city greeting its sailors with a spark of bronze over the horizon, and around you on the terrace, the evening's small crowd drifts and murmurs, citizens showing guests, a priestess crossing with her keys, swallows working the golden air off the cliff edge, and below, spread to the mountains and the sea, the whole city and its plain, the harbor roads busy with the last sails of the day, the long walls running their corridor to the port, the theater's bowl tucked into the hillside at your feet, and your host stands beside you saying nothing at all, which is, from an Athenian, the supreme tribute, and lets the marble and the light close the argument his lanes began. The way home descends past the agora as the market folds up its awnings, and the agora at evening is the other Athens, the one made not of marble, but of talk, and it gives you, in passing, the most Athenian scene this whole golden evening will offer. The square is the city's living room, bounded by its long colonnaded porticos. The stoas, built exactly so that the town's outdoor life can continue in shade and shelter, and even now, with the fish stalls empty and the bankers' tables folded, the stoas are full, knots of men arguing politics, arguing prices, arguing poetry, arguing with special relish about arguing. Because talk is this city's true industry and its favorite sport. The assembly of the citizens meets on a hillside 40 times a year to run the state by open debate and majority vote. The juries sit in their 100s. The whole apparatus of the town runs on persuasion out loud, and the agora is where the persuasion trains. And there, near the plane tree by the far stoa, is the scene your host points out with the particular grin Athenians reserve for their own local phenomena. A crowd of young men, some of the richest and cleverest in the city, stand clustered around a short, sturdy, remarkably ugly older man, barefoot, in a worn cloak, a stonemason by trade who long ago mostly stopped cutting stone, and he is doing the thing he does every day, all day, for free, which is asking questions, just questions. What is courage, friend? You say you know? Then tell me. And the answer examined and found wanting, and the next question raised, patiently, mercilessly, cheerfully, the young men leaning in like men at a wrestling match. Because this is a kind of wrestling, the new sport of this exact generation, thinking conducted in public as combat and as comedy, and the barefoot man its undefeated champion, and your host, watching your face, says only half proud and half rueful that the fellow is either the wisest man in Greece or the most annoying, the oracle having reportedly voted one way and half the husbands and fathers of Athens the other, and that you should remember the scene, because whatever it is that is happening under that plane tree, there are men in this city who swear it is the most important thing happening anywhere on earth, and on the walk home through the blue lanes, the ledger this journey opens at every fire must be opened here with particular exactness, because the golden evening above was paid for, and the account has 3 long lines. The first is slavery, and in Athens it is everywhere and enormous. A third of the people in this famous free city, by many reckonings, are enslaved. In the houses, in the workshops, your host's own pottery runs on skilled enslaved painters, in the public offices, and worst by far, in the silver mines south of the city, where 1,000s labor underground in conditions as dark as any this whole journey has recorded. And the silver they bring up is the coinage, the fleet, the empire, the marble. The city that invented the free citizen ran on the unfree at scale, without embarrassment. And the philosophers under the plane trees questioned everything, and mostly, not this. The second is the women. The wives and daughters of citizen Athens live secluded, legally lifelong minors under father or husband, absent from the assembly, the juries, the symposia, the gymnasia, the whole roaring public life of the talking city. Their sphere, the house, and the famous funeral orator of this very generation told the widows of Athens that their greatest glory was to be least spoken of among men, and the democracy of Athens was, in strict accounting, a democracy of perhaps 1 male citizen in 10 residents of the city. And the third is the marble itself. The League of Allied Cities that Athens leads against the old Eastern enemy pays its yearly tribute into a common treasury, and the treasury moved a generation ago from the sacred island to this Acropolis, and a share of those Allied contributions. The Allies themselves protested it bitterly, went into the temples you stood before at golden hour, the empire's money in the goddess's marble, the most beautiful building on earth, financed in meaningful part by cities that were not asked. You know the discipline, 16 fires and evenings deep. The light on that hill is real, and what was invented in that agora is real, and your own century's parliaments and juries and questioning habits descend from it in a straight line, and the mines and the seclusion and the tribute are real too. And the honest visitor climbs down from the golden hill carrying all of it, which is heavy, and carries it anyway, which is the whole training of this journey, and lets none of it argue the evening out of its beauty, and lets the beauty argue nothing out of the account. Supper is laid in the courtyard as full dark settles, low tables drawn up to the couches, and the meal of this civilization is the purest expression in this whole journey of a people eating their own landscape, because the Athenian table is 3 crops and the sea. The base of everything is the grain, tonight in flat barley cakes and good wheat bread, and the bread is the meal, everything else on the table being formally its accompaniment. The opson, the relish, and the relishes tonight are the country itself in small dishes. Olives, 3 kinds, from cured black to bitter green. Cheese of sheep and goat, young and crumbling. Figs dried from the courtyard's own tree. Onions, chickpeas, roasted crisp. Small fish from the morning boats, fried whole. A sea bream grilled with oregano and doused, like everything, in the green gold oil that is this country's butter, cream, and sauce in one, and honey from the famous thyme slopes of the local mountain, which the whole Greek world agrees, and your host mentions twice, is the finest honey on earth. And the wine, which arrives with its own furniture and its own constitution. No Greek of standing drinks wine neat. That is for barbarians and disasters. And at the couch's side stands the crater, the wide mixing bowl that is the true hearth of every Greek evening, where the wine is married to water, 1 part to 2 or 3 by the evening's declared ratio, and served out in shallow 2-handled cups. And the mixture is the message, wine tamed to the length of a long conversation, drunk to loosen the evening and not to lose it. And the host mixing at the crater is the evening's steersman, setting, with his ratio, exactly how far tonight's talk is licensed to sail. You eat reclined on the cline in the lamplit courtyard, propped on the left elbow in the manner you have practiced badly all week, to your host's delight. The dishes passing, the watered wine going round, the talk running through the day's assembly, and the price of good clay to the poets. Always eventually the poets. And overhead the enormous southern stars come out one by one above the courtyard square, and the meal does not conclude so much as gradually become the conversation it was always the excuse for. And the green gold oil on everything tonight deserves its own chapter before the lamps burn low, because the olive is not a crop in Athens. It is the city's co-founder, and the whole economy runs slick with it. The story every Athenian child learns first is the contest, the sea god and the gray-eyed goddess bidding for the city's patronage with gifts. His a salt spring struck from the Acropolis rock, hers a tree, the first olive, and the city chose the tree and took her name, and has never once regretted the bargain. Because look, your host says, gesturing with a crust at the little dish of oil, at everything that pours from it. The oil is food, the fat of the whole cuisine. It is light, filling every lamp in every room in the city, including the one burning at your elbow now. The olive literally illuminating the civilization it feeds. It is soap and skin care. The bathers and athletes oiling and scraping in place of all washing with suds. It is medicine, liniment, the base of every perfume, the prize at the games, victors at the great local festival, paid in magnificent painted jars of the sacred oil itself. And it is money, the surplus sailing out of the harbor in your host's own amphorae to every coast of the sea in exchange for the grain this dry plain cannot grow enough of. The city running, in its trade balance, substantially on pressed fruit. And the trees themselves are half sacred and wholly protected. The ancient gnarled stock scattered through the countryside descended. The belief runs, from the goddess's original, certain venerable trees under formal state protection, with penalties for harming them that reach as high as penalties go. And the olive earns the reverence honestly, for it is the perfect partner for exactly this landscape, thriving on stone and drought, living for centuries, some say for 1,000 years, bearing patiently through generations of the same family, so that a man who plants olives is planting, proverbially, for his grandsons, and the grove is this civilization's quietest institution, silver gray, ancient, drought-proof, handed down, the longest-term investment in this whole journey of centuries, dividends payable in light. The talk on the couches has turned, as Athenian talk always turns, to the education of somebody's son, and in the space of one lamplit exchange, your host hands you, without knowing it, the two most valuable words of the whole golden evening. The boy in question, a cousin's child, has finished his letters and music, and the family debates what he should do with his days, and the word they use for what the son of a comfortable house does with his free days, the learned leisure, the time spent at the lectures and the discussions, and the gymnasium wrestling with ideas and with wrestlers, is skole. And skole means simply leisure, free time, time not owed to labor. And because the Athenians filled their free time with exactly this, with discussion, learning, and the training of the mind, the word for leisure became the word for the discussing and the learning themselves, and then for the places where they happened, and it sailed down the centuries through Latin and every schoolroom of Europe, so that the school your century's children trudge to on gray mornings is hiding in plain etymological sight. The Greek word for free time, education, named, by the people who invented the idea, as the best thing a free person could possibly do with an open afternoon, and whether your century's schoolchildren would ratify the etymology is a question your host's generation mercifully will never have to hear. And the second word arrives when the talk turns to the cousin's estate and how it is run, and the running of a household, its stores and staff and budgets. Oikos the house, nomos the management, is oikonomia, household management, thrift and stewardship, at the scale of one courtyard, and the word will wait patiently 2,000 years and then swell to swallow whole nations, your century's economy, with its ministries and indexes, being at its root, this house, this evening, the question of whether the oil will last till the pressing, and whether the cousin's steward waters the wine too generously. The management of the world named after the management of a pantry, which is either a comic inflation or the deepest wisdom in the dictionary, and your host, who runs a tight and cheerful oikos, would vote wisdom and point out that no state was ever governed well by a man who could not govern a storeroom. Through the courtyard wall, from the house next door, comes the evening's other music, and it will accompany your whole night, so your host explains its liturgy with the fluency of a man who has hosted 100 of them. The neighbors are holding a symposium. The word says exactly what it is: sin, together, posius, drinking, the drinking together, and it is this civilization's crowning social invention, as formal in its way as the desert's coffee, the guests reclining in the andron. The men's room built for exactly this with its couches around the walls. The crater mixed to a ratio proposed and voted like a decree. A symposiarch elected to govern the evening's pace. And then the program. Because a symposium is not a party, it is a performance in which everyone performs. The wine goes round, and with it the obligations. Each guest in turn to sing a verse, cap a quotation, pose a riddle, argue a thesis, praise a beauty, the Scholian songs zigzagging across the room from couch to couch, with a myrtle branch passed to mark whose turn, the flute girl's line winding underneath, laughter cresting at a good cap or a bad rhyme, and mixed into the games, the sudden serious stretches, a whole evening famously capable of settling into one great question: what is love? What is the good life? And producing talk that men remember all their lives and philosophers write up as literature. And at the silly end of the program stands the game your century should be sorriest to have lost: kotobos, the flicking of the last inch of wine from one's cup with a practiced twist of the wrist at a small bronze target across the room, a saucer balanced on a stand to be knocked ringing to the floor. Whole party loads of the most sophisticated people in the Mediterranean competing at flicking wine dregs like schoolboys. Prizes given? Form critiqued. The goddess of love invoked over each shot and through the wall. Now you can hear the whole liturgy in progress, the murmur and the flute, a verse sung solo and answered by the room, a silence that means someone is being either very wise or very slowly witty. And then the small bronze clang of a kotobos hit, and the roar that greets it. And your host, cocking an ear like a critic, judges from the tempo that they are 2 craters in and behaving beautifully, and that the 3rd crater will decide, as it always does, whether the night ends in philosophy or in song, the 2 destinations, he adds, being closer together than sober men suppose. From deeper in the symposium's program, later, comes the lyre, someone's practiced hands taking the songs up properly, and the instrument hands you one more of the evening's words, the loveliest one, so take it before sleep. The whole realm of song, melody, and cultivated sound, this civilization files under the patronage of the 9 sister goddesses of inspiration, the Muses, keepers of memory's arts, of epic and dance and history, and the stars, and the adjective for what belongs to them, musik. The art of the Muses is this culture's word for the whole territory. Your century calls music, which is simply the Muse's name worn smooth, every symphony, playlist, and shower song of your world dedicated, right there in its own name, to 9 Greek goddesses nobody consciously invokes anymore, and the dedication was broader here than your century's usage. Musik, the covering poetry and dance and letters together. The whole education of the soul, as against the gymnasium's education of the body. The 2 halves of an Athenian upbringing, music and gymnastics. The well-tuned mind in the well-trained frame. Every boy of your host's class learns the lyre as he learns his letters, and a man who cannot take his turn at the songs, when the myrtle branch reaches his couch, is pitied here the way your century pities a man who cannot read, and the singing through the wall now, trading verse for verse in easy competence, is simply what an educated evening sounds like in this town. Ordinary as lamplight, the Muses collecting their nightly dedication from every andron in the city, in the currency they always preferred, which is amateurs singing anyway, reasonably well. Together, late. The little clay lamp at your couch's elbow has been working all evening, and before the household banks its fires, give it the minute it has earned, because this small object is the entire Greek night in the palm of a hand. It is a shallow covered saucer of fired clay, spouted, wicked with twisted flax, filled from the same jar as the salad, and it burns the city's own crop with a flame the size of an almond, steady, warm-colored, and frugal, sipping its oil so slowly that a filled lamp sees out the longest symposium, and it is everywhere. This exact object, by the 10,000, made by the trayload in workshops like your host's, sold for small coins in the agora, carried room to room cupped behind the hand, set in wall niches, hung in multiples from bronze stands in rich men's androns. The whole indoor life of this brilliant civilization, the poetry read, the arguments refined, the love declared, conducted within the small golden radius of burning olive oil. And when the archaeologists of your century dig any Greek site anywhere, the lamps come up in such numbers, humble, broken, thumb-marked, that they are the most ordinary of all finds. The very pottery of night itself, 1,000s upon 1,000s of small clay dawns. Your host's household is making its rounds now with tapers, the lamps in the colonnade winking out one by one, the courtyard drawing down to darkness and starlight, and the last lamp of the night, by the custom of this house as of most, is left burning in the little shrine by the door, before the herm, the small flame keeping the small god company till morning. And there it is again. The practice you have now found in every single century of this journey, without exception. The household refusing, in one dialect after another, oil and ghee and wax and whale and pine, to let its rooms go entirely dark, as if all of them, Greek and Norse and Aztec and Bedouin, had agreed on the one same theology after all, which is that a sleeping house should keep one eye of light open, the size of an almond, just in case the dark forgets its manners. And as the courtyard settles into starlight, the city's own bird takes up the night shift, and you hear her first call float down from the roof tiles. A small, clear, wavering whistle, repeated, unhurried, and your host smiles in the dark, because that call is Athens itself, saying goodnight. It is the little owl, and she is everywhere in this city. A small, round, fierce-eyed owl that hunts the walls and olive groves at dusk, nests in the very crags of the Acropolis and the gaps of the city walls, and perches by twilight on the roof tiles and the herms with the proprietary air of a landlady. And she is no ordinary bird. She is the companion of the gray-eyed goddess herself, wisdom's own familiar, her wide-eyed watchfulness the living emblem of the city's patron, and the city has put her, accordingly, on its money. The silver coins of Athens, struck from the deep mines you did not forget, carry the goddess's head on one face, and on the other, the little owl, standing plump and alert, and the coins themselves are called owls the whole Mediterranean over, the most trusted currency of the age, hoarded from Sicily to Egypt, and the city's proverb for any redundant act, bringing goods where they already abound, is carrying owls to Athens, because Athens, as everyone knows, has owls to spare, feathered on the roof tiles and silver in the treasury, and your century, which coined coals to Newcastle off the same mold, is still making the joke. And beyond the emblem, the actual bird is doing actual work in the actual night, gliding her silent patrols along the lanes and garden walls, keeping the city's mice in constitutional check, pausing on a herm to swivel that improbable head and file the street's activity. And her call, spaced and calm through the small hours, is the sound the whole city sleeps inside, wisdom keeping late hours over the rooftops, and there is no better night watchman in this entire journey's collection, and none cheaper than a city full of small owls on the patron goddess's payroll, paid in mice, auditing the dark. Below the Acropolis's southern cliff, tucked into the hillside like a hand cupped for water, sleeps the bowl of the theater, and your host walked you along its upper rim on the golden climb, because no visitor is excused from it, and its story is this generation's proudest. It is, in this decade, still simple. Wooden benches and stone banked up the natural slope, the flat round dancing floor at the base, the god's temple and altar beside it, seating, when the festival fills it, well over 10,000 souls. A town's worth of audience hung on a hillside in the open air, and what happens in it happened first here, anywhere, within the lifetime of the oldest men now living. Tragedy, the invention of this city, the chorus, and then the great leap, the actor stepping out of the chorus to answer it, and then the second actor, and suddenly the whole apparatus of drama, character, conflict, dialogue, existing where it had simply never existed before, and comedy alongside it, licensed, savage, and hilarious, lampooning the city's generals and philosophers by name to their faces in the front row. And the audience is the city itself. Attendance at the Great Spring Festival being half holiday and half civic duty. The juries of ordinary citizens judging the competing playwrights like they judge everything else, by vote. And the word the Athenians built for the place tells you exactly what they thought they had made. Theatron, from the verb to look, to behold, the seeing place, the building, named not for the god or the poets or the plays, but for the act of watching itself. The first architecture in human history dedicated purely to collective beholding, and every theater, movie theater, operating theater, and theater of war in your century's vocabulary keeps that Greek gaze inside it, the seeing place, and tonight the bowl lies empty and starlit below the cliff, holding its 10,000 absent watchers the way a shell holds the sea. And 6 months from tonight, it will fill at dawn for the festival and hold this whole talking city silent, together, in the open air, watching itself think. which is, of everything invented on this dry plain, the invention your host is quietest and proudest about. Outside the walls, in the green belt where the little rivers run, lie the city's other schools, the ones for the body, and your host's son spent his afternoon at one, coming home oiled, dusted, scraped, and starving, in the condition this city considers the peak of adolescent well-being. The gymnasium is the exercise ground, running tracks and wrestling pits shaded by plane trees at the sacred groves outside the gates, and its name states its dress code: gymnos, naked, the training done unclothed as a matter of course, and of pride. The oiled body in the sun being half the point, and the institution is the daily forge of Athenian youth, running, wrestling, javelin, the long-loafing conversations between bouts, and, this being Athens, the philosophers circling. Because where the young men gather to train, the talkers gather to catch them resting, and the gymnasia are already as famous for their arguments as their athletics, minds and bodies worked in the same shaded circuit, which is precisely how this city thinks it should be. And one of those groves your host mentions in passing as the lamps burn down, the one out the northwest road, a walled parkland of plane trees and olives sacred to an old hero named Academos, is at this moment nothing but a pleasant shaded gymnasium where the young men run and the old men talk, and it will stay so for another lifetime, until a broad-shouldered wrestler-philosopher, a boy of this city not yet born tonight, buys ground beside it and begins to teach there, and the grove's obscure hero will lend his name first to that school, and then to every academy, and academy your century possesses. Its academic careers and academy awards all tracing back down the northwest road to a stand of plane trees outside these walls, currently occupied in the starlight by nothing but sleeping birds and the small night wind. A word of your century's vocabulary lying out there in the dark right now, planted, watered, and waiting to sprout. The courtyard's square of sky has filled to the brim with stars, and your host, stretching on his couch before turning in, gives the heavens the amiable inspection of an educated amateur, and hands you, off the top of the sky, two last words for your collection. The stars, the fixed ones, wheel overhead in their eternal formations, rising and setting on schedule. The same law-abiding sky the navigators and the astronomers of your other nights have worked by. But 5 of the lights, the bright ones, the thinkers of this city have noticed since their grandfather's time, do not keep formation. They drift week by week, month by month, wandering against the fixed patterns, looping, pausing, doubling back, planless as sheep strayed from the flock, and the Greek for a wanderer, a drifter, a vagrant, is planets. And so, these 5 undisciplined lights are called the wanderers, the planets, and your century, which has walked on one of them with cameras, still calls them exactly that, planets. The vagrants, every world in your solar system named, at the root, for the simple, honest observation of men on couches in courtyards like this one, that those particular lights will not stay put. And the whole show above you runs to music, or so the deepest of this city's thinkers are beginning to argue, the mathematicians of the school across the Western Sea, teaching that the heavens' spacings follow the same tidy ratios as a lyre's strings. The cosmos itself strung and tuned, its motions a harmony too constant for mortal ears to notice, and whether or not the spheres truly sing. The word those thinkers and this city built for the whole beautiful ordered system, their word for the universe considered as an arrangement rather than a chaos, was cosmos, which meant, in the ordinary Greek of your host's kitchen, ornament, adornment, good order. The same root your century keeps in cosmetics, so that the universe and a well-arranged face answer to the same Greek noun, and the deepest claim this civilization ever made is folded quietly inside its dictionary, that the whole of everything rightly seen is not a wilderness, but an arrangement, a thing set in order, a beauty, and you may sleep in it accordingly. Your host's own quarter, the Potter's District by the Northwest Gate, has gone quiet around the house, the wheels stilled, the kilns banked, and it deserves its goodnight chapter, because this unassuming neighborhood of clay-dusted lanes is, at this moment in history, the most famous art district on earth. The Kerameikos, the potter's place, gave its very name to everything ceramic in your century's vocabulary, and what its workshops make is the painted pottery of Athens, the black figure of the grandfathers, and the red figure of this generation, the finest painted vessels the ancient world produces, wine cups and craters and oil jars turned on the wheel, painted freehand by masters who sign their work, and both the signing and the fame are new things under the sun. Individual artists known by name across the whole sea, collected, imitated, their styles argued over, and the jars sail out of the harbor by the shipload. This city's painted crockery gracing symposia and tombs from the far western islands to the river of Egypt, so that when your century's museums want to show what Greece looked like, how it dressed, fought, wrestled, wed, mourned, and above all, how it drank and talked, they reach overwhelmingly for the products of these few dusty lanes, the daily life of this whole civilization, preserved better than in any book, on its dishes. And the workshop's secret, your host will demonstrate for you tomorrow with justified theater, is the firing, the famous two colors, glossy black and warm red, produced not by two paints, but by one clay and 3 acts of controlled breathing. The kiln fired open, then choked smoky and airless, then opened again, the painted slip and the bare clay answering the changing atmosphere differently. The whole palette conjured from iron, smoke, and timing. Chemistry conducted by eye and ear, a bare 2,000 years before your century, could explain what the kiln was doing, and the painters painting their red figures in negative all the while, brushing the black around the bodies, drawing in effect with the background, which is the kind of cheerful impossible skill this whole city runs on, and sells, and signs. And down at the harbor, 4 miles off through the dark along the corridor of the long walls, sleeps the other half of this city's power, and your host, who has served his time on its benches, gave it its due at supper with a veteran's plain pride. The fleet. The warship of this age is the trireme, the sea's greyhound, a slim, lethal 120-foot splinter of a vessel driven by 170 rowers banked in 3 tiers, capable of astonishing sprints and of turns that gut a clumsier enemy. And Athens keeps 200 and more of them, the wooden walls the oracle promised, laid up now in their long colonnaded ship sheds around the harbor's rim, like blades in a rack. And the fact about them your host wants a visitor to carry home is not the number, but the benches. The rowers of the Athenian fleet are not slaves. They are citizens, the poorest class of them, free men pulling for pay and for the city. And the arithmetic of that arrangement remade the politics of this whole town, because a state whose safety rides on the shoulders of its poorest voters cannot easily tell those voters their voices a courtesy. The fleet and the democracy rowing, as it were, the same stroke, each pulling the other forward, the theats on the benches becoming, oar by oar and vote by vote, the fullest citizens poverty had ever produced anywhere. And your host, who pulled an oar at his class's station in his year, counts the blistered summer of it among his credentials exactly as he counts his juries, and will tell you, banking the lamp with a workman's economy, that the marble on the hill is the city's face, but the benches in the sheds are its spine, and that a visitor who has seen only the face has seen a portrait, not a man. One more word waits in the evening's civic talk, and it is the sharpest gift in tonight's whole collection, so unwrap it carefully, drowsily, last. The talk on the couches touched, before it turned to poets, on a neighbor, a capable man of good family who takes no part, attends no assembly, serves no jury, holds himself entirely to his private affairs, and the word your host used for him, without heat, as a plain description, was idiots, from idios, one's own, private, the private person, the man who keeps to himself. And in this city, that is all the word means. And it is already not quite a compliment, because Athens is the polis, the city as a community of participating citizens, the root your century keeps in politics and policy and police. And the Athenian assumption, radical then and radical still, is that public affairs are every citizen's affairs, that the man who says politics is not my business has misunderstood what a city is, and the great funeral orator of this generation said it for the record, that Athens alone regards the citizen who takes no part in public life not as a man minding his own business, but as a man who has no business here. And so idiots, the private man, began its long slide, through Latin and the centuries, from private to unskilled to ignorant, to your century's schoolyard insult, one of the strangest word journeys in this whole journey of words, an entire political philosophy fossilized inside a taunt. Because every time your century calls someone an idiot, it is repeating, without knowing it, this city's oldest civic conviction, that the worst thing a person can be is disconnected from the common life. And your host, who has served his juries and rode his trireme and stood his watches, would want you to carry the word to bed in its original wrapping, not as an insult, but as a warning label this city pasted on privacy itself, and would add, banking the last lamp, that the neighbor in question is nonetheless an excellent flute player, and that even Athens in the end lets a man be. The house's water stands in its great jars by the kitchen, and it was fetched this evening, as every evening, from the neighborhood's proudest amenity, and the fetching is a scene worth folding into your night's collection. The fountain house stands at the quarter's crossroads, a small marble-fronted public building, columned and porched like a miniature temple, where the city's aqueduct, led in from the hills and buried channels by the engineers of the tyrant's age and improved ever since, delivers its water through a row of carved bronze spouts, lion-headed, splashing day and night into the drawing basins. And the fountain house is, among its other offices, the one place in this city of secluded households where the women of the quarter lawfully gather daily, arriving at dusk with the tall three-handled hydria jars, waiting their turn at the spouts, and conducting, in the cool splash and echo of the marble porch, the quarter's true parliament, the news and matches and feuds and prices of the neighborhood exchanged jar by jar, the painted pottery of your host's own workshop, full of exactly this scene, the line of women at the lion spouts, the jars balancing, the talk, one of the painter's favorite subjects, because it was one of the city's daily beauties, and then the walk home through the blue lanes, with the full hydria riding upright on the head, a posture of such practiced elegance that the sculptors of the great temple porch, wanting figures of perfect balanced grace to hold up a marble roof forever, carved as every visitor to that porch can see, women carrying weight exactly so. The splash at the crossroads runs all night, audible now faintly from the courtyard when the lanes go quiet, the lions murmuring to the empty street, the city's water keeping its own small conversation through the dark. And it is the same sound, you realize at the edge of sleep, that has run under more nights of this journey than any other single sound. Rome's street fountain, Baghdad's courtyard rope, the stepwell's deep stillness, the samovar's first voice, water falling somewhere near sleepers in every century, the oldest lullaby that human engineering ever learned to build. And once in the deep of the night, it is the owl that half wakes you, her call dropping into the courtyard from close overhead, two clear falling notes off the roof tile, and you surface just far enough to take the Athenian night's small census through your eyelids. The fountain's far splash at the crossroads, the lions murmuring on. The symposium next door long since sung out. The last guest's torchlight and laughter having wandered off down the lane an hour ago, or a year, hard to say from here. The little flame standing steady in the doorway shrine, almond-sized, on watch. The dry breeze off the plains stirring the courtyard's fig leaves with a sound like turned pages. Somewhere streets away, a late cart, iron tires on stone, unhurried, gone. And overhead, framed exact in the courtyard square, the wanderers and the fixed stars proceeding in their tuned arrangement, the cosmos keeping good order over the sleeping polys, ornament over ornament. The owl calls once more, farther now, handing your street to the next watch, and the night closes back over its small sounds, and you go down with it, well governed, well watered, and well watched, a temporary Athenian in good standing, owing the city nothing until morning. And as the small hours run, let the Athenian year wheel once above the courtyard, because this city's calendar is a festival calendar before it is anything else, and it turns like a painted frieze. Midsummer first, the city's own new year, and its crown, the great festival of the goddess, the Panathenaia, when the whole town forms up at your host's own city gate at dawn, cavalry and elders, girls with baskets, musicians, sacrificial oxen garlanded to the horns, and processes the sacred way through the agora and up the hill, carrying to the ancient olive-wood statue. Her new robe, the peplos, woven all year by the city's chosen girls and hoisted like a sail for the climb. The whole event carved at this very hour of history, around the top of the new temple you stood before at golden hour, the city's marble mirror of its own best morning. Games follow for days, races and rowing, and the torch relay down from the groves, victors paid in the sacred oil, in those magnificent painted jars, some of which will outlive everything and stand in your century's museums with the oil stains still inside. Then the autumn plowing and the olive harvest, the groves full of ladders and beating poles and spread cloths, the presses running, the new oil tasted green and peppery as the year's first news. The winter, mild and rainy by the standards of your other winters, the sailing season closed, the courts and assembly busy, the symposia running long, and at its heart, the winter festival of the wine god with its own comedies in the theater, and at winter's far edge, the loveliest small feast of the calendar, the flower month's wine opening, when the year's new vintage is broached in every household at once, the whole city tasting the same young wine on the same day, 3 days of garlands and tasting cups in which even the enslaved of the households, this one day of the year, are seated and served at the feast, the calendar itself pausing once to loosen the ledger it cannot yet bring itself to close. Then the spring and the year's great gathering, the city Dionysia, the theater bowl filling at dawn. 4 days running, 10,000 citizens and guests from the whole Greek world watching the new tragedies and comedies judged, the playwrights of this exact generation, whose names your century's students still carry in satchels, competing fresh, and the fleet fitting out in the harbor as the sea opens, and the grain ships standing in from the straits, and the whole talking, sailing, arguing, festival-keeping year, leaning round again toward midsummer, and the procession at the gate, the city spinning through its seasons like one of your host's vases on the wheel, figure after figure rising under the painter's hand, red on black, year on year. And before the owl hands the last watch to the dawn, walk the golden evening once more, lane by lane, touching each thing as you pass it, and letting it go. The Klein in the colonnade, the all-purpose couch of a civilization that ate, thought, argued, and slept at the same comfortable angle. Let it go, the plain lanes and the blank walls, the inside-out palace, the people who kept their splendor public, and their houses humble. The treasure belonging to everyone, uphill, in marble. Let it go. The temple with scarcely a straight line in it, curved everywhere to look perfectly true, built around the human eye and looking back at every looker since. Let it go. The spear tip and helmet crest burning over the horizon for the homecoming ships, the city greeting its sailors with a spark of bronze. Let it go. The barefoot stonemason under the plane tree, asking what courage is, cheerfully, mercilessly, for free, while the cleverest young men in Greece lean in like spectators at a wrestling match. Let him keep asking, and let it go. The three-lined ledger carried down the hill, the mines and the seclusion and the allies' tribute in the goddess's marble, all of it real, none of it arguing the evening out of its beauty, and the beauty arguing nothing out of the account. Let it go. The bread and its little dishes of the landscape, the crater marrying the wine to water at the evening's voted ratio, and the host as steersman, setting how far the talk was licensed to sail. Let it go. The goddess's tree that is food, light, soap, medicine, prize, and money, the groves planted for grandsons, and the longest-term investment in all these centuries, dividends payable in light. Let it go. Skole, the free afternoon that became every school your century trudges to, and oikonomia, the pantry that swallowed the world, and no state governed well by a man who cannot govern a storeroom. Let them go. The drinking together through the wall, the myrtle branch marking the singer, the bronze clang of the kotobos and the roar, and the third crater deciding between philosophy and song, the two destinations closer than sober men suppose. Let it go. Musique, the art of the nine sisters worn smooth into every playlist of your century, and the amateurs singing anyway, reasonably well together, late. Let them go. The lamp the size of an almond, the pottery of night itself, 1,000s of small clay dawns, and the last flame left in the doorway shrine in case the dark forgets its manners. Let it go. The little owl on the roof tiles and on the money, owls carried to Athens where owls already abound, wisdom keeping late hours, paid in mice, auditing the dark. Let her go. The seeing place cupped in the hillside, empty and starlit, holding its 10,000 absent watchers the way a shell holds the sea, and a city that invented sitting together to watch itself think. Let it go. The oiled and dusted afternoons at the groves and the walled parkland out the Northwest Road, where a word of your century's vocabulary lies in the dark tonight, planted, watered, and waiting to sprout. Let it go. The 5 lights that will not keep formation, the wanderers your century has walked on, and the cosmos that is the same word as ornament, the whole of everything filed under good order and beauty. Let them go. The potter's lanes that named all ceramics, the painters signing their work across the whole sea, drawing with the background, and the daily life of a civilization preserved on its dishes. Let them go. Idiots, the private man, the warning label this city pasted on privacy itself, and the conviction fossilized inside your century's schoolyards that the common life is everyone's business, and that even Athens, in the end, lets a man be. Let it go. The lion spouts murmuring at the crossroads, the hydria riding balanced up the blue lanes, the quarter's true parliament held jar by jar in the marble porch, and the women carved into the temple porch carrying weight exactly so, forever. Let them go. The wooden walls racked in their sheds, the 170 free men to a bench, the fleet and the democracy rowing the same stroke, and the marble that is the city's face, while the benches are its spine. Let them go. And the year turning like a vase on the wheel, the peplos hoisted like a sail up the sacred way, the theater filling at dawn, the new oil green and peppery, figure after figure rising under the painter's hand, red on black, year on year. Let it turn and let it go. it is all still there, and still under debate. That is this city's particular immortality. The temple stands, the words are in your century's mouth daily, and the conversation the barefoot man started under the plane tree has never once in 24 centuries been adjourned, only recessed, nightly for sleep. The way it is recessing now, in you, so your hands can let go of the day, your shoulders can let go of the day, and your thoughts can recline on their own couches now, prop themselves on the left elbow one last time, vote the night's final ratio well watered, and let the symposium of the day dissolve, as the best ones do, into song, and the song into breathing, and the breathing into the long Athenian dark. One last thing, and the city of words should have the last word said its way. Every century of this journey has kept its night watch, and tonight's watch is a bird the size of a wine cup, sitting on the roof tiles of the most argumentative city that ever existed, and the pairing is no accident. This town chose as its emblem and guardian the one creature that does its clearest seeing in the dark, wide-eyed exactly when everyone else's eyes are closed, and set her image on its money and its rooftops both, so that waking or sleeping, spending or dreaming, the city goes about under the same unblinking sponsorship. Watchfulness itself, feathered, perched, and patient. The reminder this civilization posted to itself at every corner, that seeing clearly is the whole game, and that someone, even at this hour, especially at this hour, is doing it. The fountain lions are murmuring at the crossroads. The shrine flame is standing its almond-sized watch by the door. The wanderers are wandering, on schedule, across the well-ordered ornament of everything. And on the roof tile above your courtyard, the small gray guardian of the sharpest-eyed city in history has the night's last word, 2 clear falling notes, meaning, in the oldest Athenian, all seen, all in order, sleep. Sleep now in the city that taught your century its words. Good night.